Mabuhay sa inyong lahat. Good evening, everybody. I hope you all are having a great Father's Day. I also hope you all had a great um, Filipino Independence Day to all of my Filipino viewers who are watching this stream. Yeah, I also want to dedicate this video the stream to all the fathers who are watching. And I also hope you all have a grand Father's Day, especially to my dad, who I have considered to be one of the many people who's helped me to become the media enthusiast that I am today, as well as the music enthusiast that I am today, especially with his enjoyment of shows like In Living Color and a lot of the older Saturday Night Live episodes and Johnny Carson live. So he's really helped me appreciate American popular culture a lot more on a much deeper level. So I really have him to thank for that, and not just him, but also my mom. So, going to the main topic at hand, as I mentioned when I was announcing the stream, I'll be first talking about the anime that I grew up with, especially when I was growing up in the Philippines, whether I caught the anime series on IBC 13 or GMA 7, ABS CBN, Solar TV, heck, even Cartoon Network, Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, and let's also not forget Animax and Hero TV. Now, with Animax, it was on Dream Satellite TV, well, the now defunct Dream Satellite TV since 2017, and the now defunct Hero TV, which unfortunately went belly up back in 2014. So basically, the first part within this 3 hour, 30-minute stream is a sort of commemoration of a lot of the anime series that I caught on those networks. So, starting off when I was younger, I remembered growing up with Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z. I think Sailor Moon was on IBC, if I'm not mistaken, or ABS-CBN. I am not entirely sure which network, but for sure, Dragon Ball Z, which also had an English dub, well, a Filipino-made English dub that aired on RPN back in the 90s, was one show I was looking forward to. Good evening, Goddess So. Happy Father's Day to you and your folks. So, those childhood memories I had watching Dragon Ball Z were quite fun. And I did have rather fuzzy memories of the voice dubs because the one distinct memory I had of the Filipino English dub of Dragon Ball Z was the constant rewatching of Dragon Ball Z movies 5 and 6, which is basically combined in the Philippines as the greatest rivals. And I remembered enjoying the absolute heck out of the creative products dub. It's been quite elusive when it came to finding that as a piece of lost media. And nowadays it's been found, and ever since rewatching it on Internet Archive, well, it brought back a lot of great memories when I was a 4 or 5 year old catching Dragon Ball Z. And what would happen if the Walking Dead characters met the Dark Stalkers characters? I'd say that there would be a bloodbath. But yeah, among the voice actors and voice actresses involved, Nesty Calvo Ramirez, who currently lives in the States, was my first Goku way before the likes of Sean Schemmel or Kirby Morrow or even Peter Kalamis. Although, if you ask me, I really enjoyed Nesty Calvo Ramirez's portrayal of Goku. He really does have that fire and ebullience and strength about him. Also, there's that youthful virility that I did appreciate about his performance in that role. And interestingly enough, Apollo Abraham, he not only voiced Krillin, but he also voiced Frieza in the Dragon Ball Z movie Greatest Rivals. So it's kind of cool to hear him inflect from, this higher pitched voice for Krillin and then this, quite frankly, more manufactured, deeper voice for Frieza. Another interesting tidbit, they actually got a tween boy to voice Gohan. His name is EJ Galang. And I thought that he was the most credible performer. I mean, I really did feel the tension and the excitement when he was shouting his kiyais, attacking those robots in the second half of the movie. When Gohan had longer hair and, well, longer, spikier hair. So EJ Galang was actually the best performer because he was legitimately a young actor voicing this young kid warrior, and he was able to sell it perfectly. Yeah, and Raymond Buico, he was also epic as Piccolo and Vegeta. And the fact that he was able to kind of use that alien-like inflection for Piccolo and then provide Vegeta with a more regal tone is something that made him really versatile at the time. So I totally salute Raymond Buico for mastering that particular role exceedingly well. On top of that, there's also Mitch Frankenberger Peifer, who did an amazing job as Chi Chi. And of course, I can't forget about Manu Abello, who voiced one of Frieza's henchmen. Good times when listening to that particular dub of the movie that was sold in the Philippines. So that kind of defined my childhood growing up in the Philippines in the 90s, that particular film, and my overall introduction to the Dragon Ball Z franchise. And yes, I know that a lot of American kids grew up with Pokemon, well, especially kids from my generation. But in the Philippines, and I'm pretty sure a lot of countries in Southeast Asia, there was also Heidi, that Snow White anime, that Cinderella anime, and a lot of the anime from Nippon Animation. And I'm pretty sure that those people, especially my fellow kababayans who have grown up with anime, would probably attest that a good chunk of Nippon Animation anime series was also the stuff that they grew up with, aside from the usual Pokemon or Digimon or Sailor Moon or Dragon Ball Z. And then there was this rare anime that I caught when I was about 5 or 6 years old. It's called Dragon Warrior Abe Yusha, or Dragon Warriors. It's a pretty rare anime, and it's from the same people that created the Dragon Ball franchise. Interestingly enough, it did have an English dub, but it only lasted for like 13 episodes. The Philippines, on the other hand, lasted probably all the way through. So that's how I got totally, into that particular anime. I remembered that one scene where Daisy and Abel were sparring via sword fight, which I thought was really cool. So that's how that scene managed to be ingrained in my mind. So there was a lot of interesting anime that I caught growing up in the Philippines. And, well, even before I graduated to watching Cartoon Network at 6 years old, although I did watch it sporadically when I was about 5. I could still remember the time that I was hospitalized because of dengue. And I remember watching Cartoon Network shows before I got discharged from hospital. And speaking of Cartoon Network, it's kind of surreal that Ninja Robots aired on Cartoon Network Asia during the 90s. And there was also Akazukin Cha-Cha. I'm pretty sure that, well, Dragon Ball Z was mainly saved for RPN and eventually GMA at the time. Oh, and speaking of GMA, back in 1999, when I was a 7-year-old in the first grade still, I caught Yu Yu Hakusho, which was also known as Ghost Fighter. And what was kind of cool yet surreal was the naming of the characters. Basically, you have Yusuke, who turned into Eugene, Kurama, who initially was mistaken for a girl. He got turned to Denise before the dubbers realized that, okay, this is actually a dude, so we'll just translate it to Dennis. And then Kuwabara as Alfred, and Hiei as Vincent. Yeah, the weird anglizations of each of the names was kind of like kind of weird at the time. Although the Philippines wasn't the only country to create anglicized names for characters in an anime. I mean, overlooking Four Kids in America, in Spanish speaking countries, when Ghost Stories was aired. Hi, Dad. Thanks so much. I love you too. Thank you for coming to the chat. I wish you well, Dad, and happy Father's Day. So, when Ghost Stories aired in a lot of the Spanish speaking countries in Central and South America, the kids' characters' names were changed. Like, for example, Satsuki Miyanoshita turned into Claire, if I'm not mistaken, because I'm pretty sure that Ghost Stories, I'm going to have to search for that because, man, I might have to do a tribute video to that or a look back video on Ghost Stories, because this is an anime that I consider to be the ultimate guilty pleasure. And I know that when listening to this in Japanese or watching this in Japanese, it does feel like a sort of run of the mill um, story in which kids hunt down ghosts. Ah, here we are. Here we are. So Satsuki is turned to Claire. Keiichiro's turned to Ben. Momoko turned into Nicole. Hajime turned into Ned. And Leo turns into Paul. So the Philippines wasn't the only country to have an anime using anglicized names instead of the Japanese names. So, yeah, I know that it is quite unusual for my American viewers who kind of didn't realize that growing up in the Philippines, I first caught Yu Yu Hakusho in the 90s because considering the time that Funimation got hold of the series in 2002 and dubbed it into English, I could see where you're coming from, and I could see, where it's all coming from because I think before Funimation got hold of Yu Hakusho, the older films or the Yu Hakusho films used to be dubbed by other um, dubbing companies in the States, and well, I'm kind of iffy about them, so I'm probably just gonna have to stick with the anime because with the Yu Hakusho anime, I do get a lot more character development, and the characters, especially the main heroes in Yu Yu Hakusho, they actually use strategies instead of just pure muscle and strength, which is something that, as I stated before and will always argue, that's pretty much Dragon Ball Z's biggest weakness. And yes, I still enjoy Dragon Ball Z. I mean, I'm still conjuring up the image of, all six members of Sector V from Codename Kids Next Door doing the Kamehameha wave, i.e., Nigel, aka number one, Hoagie, aka number two, um, Wallaby or Wally, aka number four, Abby, aka number five, Katie, aka number six in my AU headcanon, and Kookie, aka number three, basically doing the Kamehameha wave. Yeah. And of course, practicing karate just like a lot of the characters on Street Fighter. Yeah. I do have a rather hyperactive imagination. So I don't know when I plan to release that. I mean, if I'm no longer busy with my MA thesis and when I have a lot of this academic mumbo jumbo behind me, yeah, I might get to it one day, but we'll see. We'll see. So going back to that, I did catch a bit of BTX, although it wasn't that much on ABS CBN. But there was also Akazukin Chacha, both the English dub on Cartoon Network, which I assume was done by, based on what I've been listening to, Filipino voice actors, because there is something noticeable in their accents that make me convinced that these were Filipino voice actors speaking English and using a script that wasn't English. Yeah, going to my thoughts on Akazukin Chacha. I really love both the first and the second seasons. Those were like the top tier seasons for me. Season 3, well, it felt like uh it felt like a graveyard season And my reasoning for saying that is because seasons 1 to 2 had the magical girl transformation, as in Cha-Cha, with the help of Ria and Shine, have their magical amulets, and Cha-Cha utters the word of love, Ria courage, and Shine hope. And lo and behold, Cha-Cha turns into the magical warrior princess. And at the time when I was a young boy, I really had such an affinity for kick ass warrior princesses. Give me warrior princesses and formidable chicks like Xena Warrior Princess, Buffy Summers from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and yes, even Cha Cha in her magical warrior princess form from Akazukin Cha Cha. Aside from the Sailor Senshi from Sailor Moon, I could kind of understand why Akazukin Cha Cha didn't take off too much in America, because I think looking at Cha Cha and her warrior princess design, she almost looks like somebody out of Sailor Moon. Now, I don't mean to trigger anybody who enjoys Akazukin Cha-Cha and thinks that I'm just trivializing, Cha-Cha's magical warrior princess form as if though that it was kind of ripped off of Sailor Moon. But I think a lot of the references in Akazukin Cha-Cha, while also or chiefly based in a lot of the Western fairy tales. I mean, hello, Cha-Cha is essentially Little Red Riding Hood, and then you also have a lot of references to sorcery and witchcraft, and um, a reference to the Frankenstein monster, as well as a mermaid, or or Marine is essentially akin to the title heroine of the Little Mermaid, and yeah, a whole bunch of fairy tales combined into one fun show. In fact, I remember when I was a kid, I kind of compared Cha-Cha's parents to, you know, her father being a much older version of Prince Philip, and her mother being like a more mature version of Princess Aurora from Sleeping Beauty. In fact, they really did remind me of Prince Philip and Princess Aurora from Sleeping Beauty, both the Disney animated movie and the original fairy tale by Charles Perrault. And I think Cha-Cha's grandfather, he kind of looked like a combination of King Stefan and King Hubert, but merged into one character, yet a lot more formidable looking. That was basically my impression. But I had a lot of fun watching Akazukin Cha-Cha. It's just that I kind of compare the downgrade from kick-ass magical girl action from seasons 1 to 2 to just being kind of meh as a magical girl series. Like, Cha-Cha only has her magical bracelet to solve the problems, and that's it. No more power-ups, no more this and that. So season 3 was sort of, at least in my opinion, when Akazukin Cha-Cha was already dead to me. I would argue that, much like how Rustin Van Catwick from Fun Fact Films stated that Fresh Prince of Bel Air died in season 5 in its finale of For Whom the Wedding Bells Toll, I argue that with Akazuken Chacha, it died in the final episode of season 2. I don't know the name of that episode. I mean, I've caught a bit of Akazuken Chacha's dub in which there are some, some of the released um, English dub episodes on YouTube. So let me check out the name of that because it's been a while, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a while. So the name of the episode. Let me scroll down here because here we go. Here we go. Yeah, it's really been a while. Oh dear. Defeat of Daimao. Episode 56. Goodbye Holy Up. That was when Akazuken Chacha died, at least in my opinion. I know that there are people who are very passionate about the show, who've watched it and had a lot of fond memories of Akazuken Chacha growing up and would like to argue with me and saying that it didn't die. It was just, it just kind of went into a new direction, which I totally understand. But the sentiments I had when I was a child watching Akazuken Chacha on Cartoon Network Asia remained. I still argue that, from seasons 1 to 56, those were actually the most watched, or excuse me, not for seasons. From episodes 1 to 56, those were actually the most watchable episodes. Episodes 57 onwards, or shall I say episodes 57 to 74, those were like, it overstayed its welcome. I know that episode 74 ended with Seraphy and Dorothy ended up getting married, but to me it was like it was too little too late. After another 17 episodes of Akazuken Chacha, I kind of felt like the show lost its appeal. It lost its it kind of lost its kick butt action and just became another magical girl series with a young girl solving the problems. That's it. No monsters, no demons, no dragons whatsoever. It was just meh in the last 17 episodes. It felt like a completely different show, and it felt like it was not as enjoyable as episodes 1 to 56, which, like I said, I'm always going to argue that those episodes of Akazukin Chacha are the ones that remain golden in my eyes and the ones that will continue to win even after more than 2 decades of catching the show on Cartoon Network. So, Ninja Robots. I remembered enjoying the show. That was before I was introduced to Gundam. And I was also introduced to other anime series like Voltas 5 and what was the name of that anime with Richard and Erica? Daimos, I believe. Yeah, I think that was Daimo. I think that was Daimos. But Voltas 5, yeah, it was enjoyable. So let me check it out. Richard, Erica, anime. Yeah, Daimos. Daimos. That I remembered catching on GMA, and it was just as fun. I remember catching Daimos and Voltus 5. Yeah, also with the Filipino English dub. Both of them fun anime series. I have yet to really watch them more critically, but I don't think I really have the time because there are many other bigger fish to fry. Lots of other bigger fish to fry in the anime world. And others that I still want to prioritize on. Because the thing about me and mecha anime, although I enjoy mecha anime from time to time, it takes a lot of mental investment and emotional investment just to try to make um, a very um, good review of any mecha anime. So then comes my experience with AXN. Oh, yes. If I thought my experiences of watching anime on IBC, GMA, ABS-CBN, or any of the other Filipino networks was something, and lest I forget about Solar TV, because when I was watching television in my paternal grandma's house, I caught the shows on Cartoon Network, Solar TV, and AXN. I remember catching the Jungle Book anime on Solar TV and the Filipino English dub of the original Dragon Ball anime. Yeah, the Jungle Book anime was actually really good, and the only downside I had about it was it doesn't really hold a candle to my personal favorite adaptation of Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling, which is the Russian animated version, in which we do get to see Mowgli growing from impetuous boyhood to formidable manhood. So I do recommend that film. I really do recommend The Adventures of Mowgli to all of you guys watching. But I also beg you to not skip out on the Jungle Book anime or Shonen Mowgli Jungle Book, if I'm not mistaken, that's the title. So they're actually quite good adaptations, but you would definitely enjoy the Russian film adaptation a lot more. Just saying. And then AXN. That's where I actually got a lot of my anime fix. There was Steam Detectives. I remembered enjoying that series. I did have a bit of a fuzzy memory of that show, but I think I will consider that as a potential anime to review. There was also the Power Stone anime. I never played any of the video games. The anime series was one that I grew up with. And Flame of Recca, another anime series that was quite akin to Yu Yu Hakusho in terms of its premise, whether it be the characters implementing um um magical attacks and supernatural attacks, and also being involved in a tournament setting around the later seasons or episodes. Ninku was another one that I did enjoy and managed to rewatch on Animax in 2006. And then came Street Fighter Alpha, the movie. I make it no surprise that I am a huge Street Fighter fan. I still enjoy a lot of Ryu's and Ken's epic bouts filled to the brim with virile bromance. And you're also looking at a guy who has been shipping Ryu with Chun Li and Ken with Cammy ever since I was about, I would say, 7 years old, at the latest in 1999, or maybe 8 years old back in 2000. So, a lot of great memories I had with the Street Fighter franchise. It was also around 1999 that I got my first PlayStation. Yeah. Yeah, good memories of me playing on my PlayStation while I was kind of being annoying little schnick to a lot of the helpers around the house. Yeah, my privileged side is showing, and uh, I don't. That's one part of me I don't particularly miss. I don't particularly miss myself being that privileged or overly spoiled little schnick, because, well, being pampered at that age does make you think you could get away with certain things, but once you get to the real world, well, that's where things get to start raining down on you. And, well, you need to firmly take a lot more responsibility, especially if you're going to take a hold of it as an adult. Fortunately for me, I'm a 32-year-old about to finish my master's degree. I'm about halfway done with my master's thesis. I'm in my like 34th page, approaching 35th, but I'm quite excited. I'm really excited to do like close readings on the 5 Fresh Prince of Bel-Air father figures, i.e., Uncle Phil, Jeffrey, Lou, uh, Robert, and Marcus. So we're basically looking at 2 main father figures in the forms of Uncle Phil and Jeffrey, Will's biological father, or absentee biological father in Lou, the potential replacement father figure in Robert, and Will's basketball rival in Marcus, who so happens to be a young single father of one young son and is also the eldest of his family. Yeah, and he also has to take care of his younger sisters too. So a lot to think about when it comes to like the portrayal of black fatherhood on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I kind of well, in terms of black American, yes, I know that Jeffrey is actually British, but I kind of counted him as a sort of representation of black American fatherhood because consider this. He's lived with the Banks family for quite some time, and he is just as much an asset to the Banks family's high socioeconomic advantage. So that's something to really think about. So, and interestingly enough, another interesting anime that I caught that I think really does deserve a review one day is Ghost Sweeper Mikami. I know that there are a good chunk of people who remembered enjoying it, but don't particularly like it as soon as they grow up. But for me, it was really cool seeing someone like Mikami be, well, chiefly this fiery, independent, fierce fighter chick, while at the same time being a bit on the sassy side, to the best of my knowledge. Furthermore, aside from Akazukin Chacha that I caught on Cartoon Network, I remembered visiting one of my grandma's friends, and when I tuned into Cartoon Network when I was about 5 years old, 5 or 6 years old, I caught Ranma One Half. Well, on Cartoon Network. Well, one of the movies, which was Farewell. Yeah, it was like one of the movies that saw Ranma and the gang going on a quest to rescue Akane. My opinion about Ranma One Half has been dwindling and dwindling throughout time. So I know I make my presence on DeviantArt rather known that I've been using Rumiko Takahashi as a punching bag. Well, for a lot of things that she stands for, because the double standards found in her works and the tendency to reuse character tropes and not really explore healthy relationship dynamics. And then you got a lot of so-called fans just eating up everything that Takahashi has to offer. That has become my hugest point of contention. And I still have not been that forgiving when it comes to what Rumiko Takahashi stands for. That's totally okay, Rogue Agent. It's so great to have you here. And really, thank you so much, Rogue Agent, for your continuous support. It really means a lot to me. I do wish you a lot of love and prosperity for this Father's Day. And here's also hoping that you continue to do well in your endeavors. Okay, so I'm sorry I didn't see this much earlier, Miss Kitty. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, well, veering away from anime, I only caught I Love Lucy rather sporadically, but I mainly remembered I Love Lucy from its parodies. I remembered one in Nickelodeon that I caught with Amanda Bynes playing Lucille Ball's character, which was absolutely fun to watch. So, yeah. I also caught a bit of Rama 1/2 on AXN, so another anime series that I caught during my childhood in the Philippines. Out of all the anime series that I remembered enjoying the most when I was a kid, obviously Street Fighter Alpha, the movie, ranks quite high. I remembered catching Akira as well. What else? Flame of Recca. I can't go wrong with Flame of Recca at all. It was quite the major hit in the Philippines. The worst anime show I ever watched. Well, Rogue Agent, I actually have a good number of anime that I would consider some of the worst. Let's see. It's Date My Santa was annoying. It was pretty pathetic, in my opinion. School Days, it was stupid. School Days was just absolutely stupid. Now, there was one anime that my good buddy Gourmet Ninja told me was really the worst, and that's called Blue Flames. I remember watching Scamp's video review on Blue Flames and how he bashed it for being just so terrible. And when it came to like the main character of Kaizu, I could barely give a shit about that shithead at all. No, not Scamp, but Kaizu, the main so-called protagonist or the main so-called hero of Blue Flames. Yeah, his constant want for power and betting a lot of, impressionable girls so that he could be this uber macho man. Whatever. Yeah, Blue Flames is, I would argue, really is actually one of the worst. Green, I thank my lucky stars that I did bother to catch it. Although, should anybody recommend me to review it, or if I dare review it out of my own volition, I'll tear it a new one. Magicano, it was annoying. I caught that anime on Animax when I was a 14-year-old, or more specifically, a 14 going on 15-year-old about to finish the 8th grade and head over to my first year of high school. So Magicano, in my opinion, was annoying as hell. I just couldn't really stand, how spineless Haruo was, and a lot of the stupidity revolving around um, Ayano and his younger sisters. It's a mess. Magicano was a mess. It was an absolute mess. So yeah, I'm no longer like, I'm far from being that impressionable 12 to 15-year-old catching anime on Animax, kind of blindly thinking that all of them were cool. I'm a lot more selective of which anime I perceive to be one of the finest and which ones I perceive to be one of the not so great. Let's see. Yeah, and then there was Cooking Master Boy and Grand Fencer Musashi. Enjoyable, but not the most memorable in my opinion. I still think that Flame of Recca, Ninku, Vandred, Gatekeepers, Steam Detectives, Street Fighter Alpha, and Akira are the cream of the crop when I caught those on Animax. Or excuse me, AXN. I didn't start watching Animax until I was 12 years old. So AXN, yeah, the anime that I caught on AXN, and they also did help increase my fascination and love for anime. And it's no wonder why when you check me out on YouTube, I'm known as Opera, or my username is Opera Anime Lover 369, because I combine my love for opera and my love for anime into one fun package, ladies and gentlemen. That's just how much I'm kind of like this clash of cultures, but I love it. I love it. It just makes things a lot more fun and entertaining. Yeah, I kind of understand your sentiments about it, Rogue Agent. That bastardized Sailor Moon anime. Thank God I didn't even bother to touch it. But before I caught a lot of the anime on Animax, and during my Christmas break in Shenzhen in China with my family, I stumbled upon a DVD, a Chinese DVD of Jungle no Oja Tachan. There was like a Tarzan like muscular man, and he was someone who kind of caught my eye as an impressionable 11-year-old in the 5th grade. Yeah. He was such a major hunk. And I remember just being totally enamored with the DVD, and when he was like flexing his muscles at the back, and then Jane, before she became fat, was hiding behind him. Now I can understand why that anime was only aired in Japan and China, because if you watch the anime in its entirety, it's freaking lewd. There are some lewd moments that I don't think you would want American audiences to get away with unless you air this stuff on like the 12 a.m. block on the Sci-Fi Network's anime block. Although I don't even think that, I highly doubt that Sci-Fi Network in the 90s would have aired that. I think they would have, but it would have been a bit sticky, if you know what I mean. The fact that Tachan like stretches his scrotum so that he could like fly like a flying squirrel is just like, oh my god, that is just freaking nuts. Yeah, I know that if I were monetized, which I used to be, but no longer, if that happened, or I'm still trying to get monetized, but if this were to happen, I'd be like, oh dear, can't say that. Got nothing to live for? Live out of spite is my motto. Very interesting, Rogue Agent. Very interesting. So that was sort of a pretty. Oh, yeah. And I also caught Galaxy Express 999 on one, I think on NHK when I was 11. I caught a bit of it in its original Japanese dub. It took me until I was almost about to turn 20 when I bought both the Galaxy Express 999 movies in Hong Kong during the time when HMV was still up and running. Yeah, I do miss HMV. Shout out to a lot of my Hong Kong viewers watching. I hope you all have a great Father's Day. Please keep on cherishing the moments you guys have with your fathers. So, yeah, I remembered both movies being absolutely top tier. And ever since then, I've learned to appreciate Leiji Matsumoto a lot more as a creator. That's totally cool, man. That's totally cool, Rogue Agent. I'll see you next time. So, yeah. Which brings me back to after I caught a lot of the anime before my tweens. So, interestingly enough, on Disney Channel, there was the English dub of Boo Boo Cha Cha, which was made by, I think it was Odex, a Singapore based anime dubbing company that dubs anime into English. And also like the Aesop's Tales anime series, also on Disney Channel. Yeah, back when Disney Channel used to be all about the edutainment and trying to make sure that kids know their stuff before it ended up being devolved into the tweeny teeny bopper channel of the mid to late 2000s. I don't really miss that particular decade, but I do miss that previous decade when Disney Channel actually gave a crap about good entertainment and equally good edutainment. Yeah. I really do miss those blocks such as How Things Work and Guide to Life. Those were definitely great pieces of entertainment and great interstitials for Disney Channel. And of course, Timon and Pumbaa's Find Out Why. Good times from that darn network. Good times. Although, yeah, most of the chunk of the big three when it comes to airing anime was mostly from Cartoon Network. Then came my US trip when I was an 8-year-old alongside my mom and my younger sister. And I think my baby brother ended up staying at home with my grandma. My younger brother stayed at home with my grandmother. So it was basically me and my younger sister at the time. I caught Digimon, I caught Pokemon on Cartoon Network. I think Digimon, I think it was on Fox. Yeah, Digimon was on Fox Kids. Yeah. Although I was more of a Cartoon Network dude growing up. What else? But at the same time, Dragon Ball Z, from beginning to end, was my shiz. It was my absolute shiz, whether I was based in the Philippines or whether I was in the United States. Dragon Ball Z was absolute bliss during those impressionable, youthful years. Then came, and then speaking of impressionable boyhood years, I also caught Gensoma Den Sayuki on AXN, which, looking back at it, was actually quite enjoyable. It's kind of, I mean, the best thing about Gensoma Den Sayuki, let alone the Sayuki franchise as a whole, is that at least the characters or the main characters of Sanzo, Goku, Gojo, and Hakai, they don't necessarily use their brawn to overcome their enemies. They also engage in using their heads and their tactical skills to overcome their enemies. Although there are times that, you know, Sanzo is a bit of a bastard and Goku tends to be a bit on the annoying side, but the one character I actually loved from Gensoma Den Sayuki was Cho Hakkai, because he was very level-headed and intelligent and smart. He was the smart dude who kept everybody together, and he was the smart dude that I aspired to be when I was a lot younger. Gojo, he was very entertaining. Sha Gojo was very entertaining because he was such a womanizer. Yeah. Gensoma Den Sayuki and the entire Sayuki franchise, they were quite fun. They were absolutely enjoyable. El Hazard, I only caught bits and pieces of it. And Rave Master, I also caught bits and pieces of it on AXN. There was also the dub of it in the United States. I think a lot of my Toonami faithful viewers might argue that it was quite enjoyable. Yeah, and then Naruto. That particular, well, it didn't air on AXN though. Yeah, that particular 2002 anime didn't end up getting a Cartoon Network release, let alone an English dub, until 2005. So catching a bit of Naruto on Toonami when I was vacationing in the States alongside my mom, my dad, my younger sister, my younger brother, going to California, more specifically having having our stays in LA. Yeah, that was quite fun. That was really, really fun. Yeah, Naruto. Yeah, my time spent with watching Naruto on Cartoon Network's Toonami as a 13-year-old boy, for me, that was actually quite fun. That was actually really fun. Heck, even Naruto ended up airing on Cartoon Network Asia somewhere in around 2007, late 2007 or early 2008. But I remember watching a promo of Naruto on Cartoon Network, both in the US and in the Philippines. They still kind of got me interested, but these days with Naruto, it's sort of like, eh. Yeah, Naruto is one of those anime series that unfortunately aged like sour milk. It's not entirely bad per se, but I think now as a grown up, I just couldn't really get into it anymore. So I know I've been going all over the place. I know I've been really going on and off tangent, but it kind of goes to show you that there is a pattern here. So I hope you've all taken notes. But the general consensus was that I became a full-fledged anime fan when I was 12 years old, and lo and behold, I got myself inducted into the mecca of anime series known as Animax. The times I spent back in 2004 after being quite fed up with Dave the Barbarian and um, a lot of the annoying shenanigans and the tween teen sitcoms on Nickelodeon and Disney Channel, and well, Western animation being a bit of a hit or miss for me. Well, on Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and Disney Channel, although I still love Teen Titans and Justice League, as well as Justice League Unlimited. And of course, I still loved Gundam Seed and Zoids, but those particular anime shows could not hold a candle to a lot of the stuff I caught on Animax. Although I would say that I will say that Zoid's Chaotic Century and Zoid's Fusors, um, I haven't been familiar with the other one. Let me double check because um, because I know that there were some Zoids anime. Yeah, the first one I caught was in 2002 was Zoid's Chaotic Century. A lot of my colleagues in grade school, they were, well, most male colleagues in my grade school, they went crazy about Zoids, Beyblade, and Crush Gear Turbo. Looking back at those anime, I would say that Zoids was actually the more enjoyable one because I was a covert um enjoyer of a lot of the fighting anime, let alone a lot of the fighting games before I kind of went back and forth between, liking loving opera and then liking video games at 11, even to the point where my dad also got me a PlayStation 2. It's been a while. It's really been a while since I played both the original PlayStation and PlayStation 2. So these days, I'm no longer that much of a gamer as I was in my very young and impressionable, quote unquote, couch potato years. Yeah, I just kind of outgrew a lot of the video games. It's just really not it for me anymore. Um, overlooking the overlooking the fact that I don't want to spend the rest of my life as a fucking couch potato. I want to keep living the life I want to live. And not to mention, I was also veering a lot more into opera and even classical crossover, which I'll admit is a guilty pleasure. Yeah, I'm fully aware of that, Miss Kitty. I'm fully aware of that. But yeah, Zoids, Beyblade, and Crush Gear Turbo, and even a good chunk of the Digimon anime series. Those were all the rage at the time in the 2000s. Those were all the freaking rage. But, I kind of still enjoy them, although I would still recommend them to younger kids. But other than that, they don't really have that much of an appeal to me anymore, given me now as a grown up. Although, like I said, going back to my 12-year-old's tenure on Animax, although I never had anything to do with like wanting to be on Animax, it was just like heaven on earth. Catching a lot of the anime series as a 12-year-old boy in 2004 was like freaking heaven on earth. And I'm just shocked, let alone surprised, that a good chunk of these anime series didn't end up being licensed by American, let alone Canadian companies. Yeah, you got, underrated gems like Princess Comet, which I was surprised was based on a 1960s manga. Then you got Detective School Q, which was, you know, from the same people who created the young detective Kendaichi Case Files manga and anime. I used to think that as a 12-year-old boy, Kintaro Toyama was my definition of a hunky himbo. Yeah. I kind of found him rather appealing. I mean, when he was like flexing his bicep in the second ending of Detective School Q, that second ending song for Detective School Q, I thought to myself, man, what a freaking hunk he was at the time when I was this impressionable 12 to 14-year-old between 2004 to 2006. Okay. So yeah, Detective School Q ranked up with one of the best anime series I caught on Animax. Then there was Monkey Typhoon, and even before being fully, inducted as an otaku, thanks to Animax, thanks to my, digestion and ingestion of anime series on Animax, there was also my time catching Rurouni Kenshin on AXN. The first time, I think, when I was an 8-year-old boy, that was before Cartoon Net Toonami dubbed or Toonami released the dub in 2003 on Cartoon Network. And I had such a blast watching Rurouni Kenshin or Samurai X as a kid. And then it also aired on Studio 23 back when I was 11. So, really perfect timing when it came to how the American dub or like the dub with Richard Cancino as Genshin was airing on Cartoon Network and in the States. So quite the perfect timing for me to continue to appreciate Rurouni Kenshin a lot more. And I even rediscovered Rurouni Kenshin and my appreciation for that particular anime when I was 15, when the original series aired on Animax. Then came the OVAs and the movies, which I also caught on Animax when I was a 14-year-old. Great times. Fushigi Yugi or Curious Play. The first time I caught this anime was on AXN. Um, it's basically what happens if you combine an isekai with a love story and a bit of a harem. You get Fushigi Yugi. It's still enjoyable to this day as an adult, but other than that, it's okay. I mean, it's not one of the best, nor is it one of the worst. It's there. It's there, it's enjoyable, and I could still kind of enjoy it from time to time, especially when I'm having a little bit of an iffy day. Um and then it aired again on Animax as well as Fushigi Yugi Ekoden. I did not like Sayo at all. I freaking hated her guts. She was just so annoying with her whole clinging on to Tamahome, and she was pathetic. But the whole love story between Tamahome and Miyaka, it was quite precious and rather lovely. And really, really sweet in my opinion. It was something I kind of lived and died for at the time. And what else aside from Curious Play that emigrated from AXN to Animax? Yeah, same thing with the same case with Samurai X or Rurouni Kenshin. Ah, yes. I remembered watching Ultramaniac. I remembered watching Card Captor Sakura. I still like that anime. Yeah, I know it's rather surreal, right? What guy has any business catching a magical girl anime like Card Captor Sakura on Animax? It still has the audacity to enjoy it. And what guy would also have the audacity to also enjoy Princess Tutu? And I could still argue that Princess Tutu is definitely one of the best shoujo anime, let alone best magical girl anime I've ever seen. Well, you're also looking at the same guy who also grew up with Sailor Moon and enjoyed the heck out of it. Both especially when it came to the original Deke English dub, as flawed as it was. Regardless, I still enjoyed Sailor Moon. I haven't really caught that much of the Sailor Moon movies, let alone the reboot Sailor Moon Crystal. But I'm pretty sure that to those who caught it, I'm pretty sure it was quite good. Let's see. Yeah, all I'm saying is, Card Captor Sakura, Ultramaniac, and Princess Tutu, those were absolutely wonderful. I still think that with Ultramaniac, it went from being just absolutely enjoyable and one of the best I've ever seen to actually quite good. It's still quite good. It's still entertaining. It still manages to leave a huge smile on my face every time I catch the characters on screen. But I still stick to my guns when I say that aside from Detective School Q being one of the best anime series I caught on Animax, Technolize ranks supreme, and then Wolf's Rain was just as grand. And of course, let's also not forget about the majesty that was Great Teacher Onizuka, or GTO for short. Yeah, and Dokiri Doctor. Sometimes I have no idea why a good chunk of these anime series didn't end up getting licensed in America or a lot of the English dubbing companies. It's still kind of strange because when I caught Animax as a 12-year-old boy, I also caught a lot of them like using the Animax dubs. A lot of nice memories to be had with those dubs on Animax, but it kind of showed in its budget when they were reusing a lot of the actors and actresses for different characters. The noticeable ones that I've remembered listening to were Andrea Kwan as Megumi Minami from Detective School Q and Satsuki Miyashita, aka Suki, in the Ghosts at School Animax dub before ADV Films got their hands on it and completely went ape shit with the script to create ghost stories. Yeah, sometimes I kind of wonder what would have happened if Detective School Q ended up receiving the ADV Films treatment. I sometimes wonder. And personal anecdote, that was actually one of my biggest dreams growing up as a young kid. After Detective School Q like got pulled out of Animax somewhere in 2007, I ended up missing it so much. It even got to the point where researching this anime on Anime News Network, I found out that there was no American or Canadian English dub for Detective School Q. Yeah, it kind of made me think, if Detective School Q, excuse me, yeah, my throat got a bit itchy. If Detective School Q received the ADV Films treatment, or the Funimation treatment? Well, most likely ADV Films treatment, because Funimation still had their hands on, Dragon Ball Z or the Dragon Ball franchise, Full Metal Alchemist, and Yu Yu Hakusho. So here's who I would have loved to hear as the following characters, because, like I said, my personal anecdote, a lot of the characters I wanted to voice on Detective School Q, it was a toss up between Q and Ryu. Like Q Renjo, the main protagonist, and Ryu from um, Detective School Q. So it was actually one of my, I mean, back then when I was 12, it would have it would have been cool for me to have gone the Aaron Dismuke route and voiced Kazuma Narusawa, and if I had turned like 14, or at 14, I would have probably gone either with Kazuma or Q. But by the time my voice deepened a lot more, it probably would have been more possible for me to have a go at um, Ryu from Detective School Q. So let me try to, yeah, because it was it was actually one of my pipe dreams growing up, if you could believe it. It was one of my biggest pipe dreams growing up as an extremely impressionable teenager, and an even bigger pipe dream when I was in my early 20s to just want to go to Texas and, go to Funimation, and hopefully that they'll end up like licensing or releasing Detective School Q with an English dub. But these days with Funimation belly up since a few months ago, and ended up being merged and turned to Crunchyroll, or being now um, Crunchyroll. It's it's not gonna happen. I mean, the only times where I'm ever gonna do stuff like voice acting is only for like um collaborative stuff with in Team Night Saturn, as well as with Manic Expression, which I'm thankful to have been a member of those reviewer sites. And hey, you're looking at a very proud Manic Expressionist and Team Night Saturnist all in one go. So thank you so much, Jack Skyblue and James. Um, and James, for really making me a part of these two websites. You guys are amazing. You guys are absolutely grand. You guys have absolutely gave me a lot of direction of where I needed to be. And I also hope that you guys all have grandfather's days. Grandfather's days that you guys can remember. And oh yeah, excuse me, James Daniel Walsh. So yeah. So like I said, Jack Sky Blue, James Daniel Walsh, thank you guys so much for making me a part of your websites. You've definitely helped me to, you know, express and love my passions and really cherish those passions a lot more, and just go at it all guns blazing. So, if Detective School Q had the ADV Films treatment, well, specifically around the time that Ghost Stories was released, yeah, here's my dream cast for the five main detectives. Um for Kintaro Toyama, I would have picked Justin Cook, but I think he was mostly a Funimation dude. So I know that ADV Films and what do you call this? ADV Films and Funimation were based in like two different parts of Texas. Like I think ADV Films is in Dallas and Funimation is in Houston. I don't know. Flower Mound, but okay, fine. But this is just a dream cast that I've been concocting ever since I was 21 or even younger. So yeah. Justin Cook would have been my ideal choice for Kintaro Toyama. He just has this roughness in his voice that was quite evident when he was voicing Yusuke, and I think he could also use it well for Kintaro Toyama. Then you got for Ryu Amaksa, I would probably pick Johnny Young Bosch, either Johnny Young Bosch or Chris Patton. Actually I would pick Chris Patton for Rio Maxa because he also has this coolness in his voice. Besides, I think he could also use that youth in his voice to emit that cool, calm, mysterious nature about Ryu. Then for Megumi, Hilary Haig at the drop of a hat. Hilary Haig without a doubt. Then Q. This is going to be rather difficult. So with Q, well, Kazuma, I know who I would have cast. Christine Otten. Christine Otten as Kazuma. That is actually genius casting right there for Christine Otten as Kazuma, because she could also do little boy roles, younger boy roles very well. I know that Christine Otten does a lot of mature women. I mean, take a look at her performance as Rizal from Chrono Crusade. If you want to hear someone voice this sumptuous and intimidating character. And then for Q, it's a toss-up between Colleen Klinkenbeard and Stephanie Nadolny. I would say that, Colleen Klinkenbeard does fit the bill for Q's very ebullient nature and curiosity of how he can manage to be a detective. Whereas with Stephanie Nadolny, I think she could have handled the more inquisitive and really focused and determined parts about him. So here I go. I mean, if I could share the screen, be right there. Hold on. Oh, shit. Sorry. Yeah, so I don't know if I could still have this youthful voice in me to voice any of any of the young boy characters like Q, but I think I'm gonna give it a try. I'm just gonna give it a go because you kind of get to see just where I'm coming from. So let me try to share the screen first, and then I'm gonna yeah, I'm basically just reading this off the subtitles. That's so easy. The culprit is, huh? Oh, Mom? Not yet. Yeah, you could kind of tell that me trying to do Q's voice would entitle me to sound a little bit more forced, just to still like emit that sound of youthfulness, because Q is supposed, because if you know your anime history, you'll realize that Megumi Ogata was the voice of Q. So she was definitely um a maverick, let alone a maestra at her job at voicing a lot of these young boys. So I'm gonna try to have a go at, yeah. If you'll excuse me, yeah. So that was actually one of my pipe dreams growing up as a kid. Growing up as a kid, totally into anime, like voicing a lot of the characters from like voicing one of the characters from Detective School Q, i.e., um, sorry, this one is sub in Indonesia. I'm trying to look for the one with the English, well, not really English, no, English sub, yeah. But yeah, that was actually one of my biggest pipe dreams growing up, if you could believe that. It was one of my biggest pipe dreams growing up as a young kid who was into anime, totally into a lot of this stuff. So these days, that dream has kind of been compromised because, well, at the end of the day, it's sort of like there are new directions, and of course, I can't take my education for granted. So that's something that I will continue to not to never ever take for granted. So hang on a second. I'm sure that there was like an ending scene in which so here I go. Hang on. Yes, hello. Yeah. Oh. Yes, because if I think I could do Ryu's voice a little bit better because Ryu is very calm and collected, and he knows exactly what he needs. So it's this type of nuance that makes him mysterious, but you can't afford to mess with him. Whereas with Q, I do need to really heighten my voice to make sure that I get the excitability of this character, but also listen here, I am not putting up with this crap anymore. This type of sorry, excuse me. Or I'm just trying to think about what other words Q would say. Like, it's really you. You've done this. You committed this crime. That's sort of like Q's inflection. So I was around like 14 years old, 13, when I was like thinking about which character could I voice if ever I ended up moving to the States, and Detective School Q would have ended up getting an English dub. Yeah, so that was one of my pipe dreams growing up as a very young, impressionable otaku, and totally into anime and just loving every bit of anime goodness. So here I go. Maybe I'm gonna have to give this segment a go. Maybe I ought to give this particular segment a go just to see which would you guys think I would be more suitable for, whether it be Q or Ryu. So here I go. I'm gonna play the original clips so that you guys could see which one I could handle. Okay, this one is sub, mind you. There's only one bed. You don't mind sharing it, do you? Well, you're okay, then I am. Oh, okay. Let's go sleep. Yes. Just kidding. I'll just put a futon for you. So that's my. So I'll just have to do it without the original audio or with the audio muted because it's mainly in sub. So here I go again. There's just one bed for the both of us. You don't mind sharing it, do you, Ryu? Sorry. The lip flaps didn't match. There's only one bed. You don't mind sharing it, do you, Ryu? Well, if you're okay, then I am. Okay, then let's go sleep. Yeah. I'm just kidding. I'll put out a futon for you. So there you go. That was my attempt at trying to voice either Q or Ryu. I think as I grow older, I think as I grow older, I start realizing that my voice is a little bit more adept to voicing a lot of these cold, mysterious anti-heroes, or like Ryu, because he's very he's rather distant, and you'll need to peel in a lot more layers to his character to understand that he's a lot more than meets the eye, but he will be on top of certain situations, but he's not going to tell you how. He's going to make you guess until you find out what's next. So I think my voice is a lot more suitable for these mysterious characters like you. Whereas with Q, I do need to amp up the volume a little bit more and be like all of this excitability in one moment, but serious the next when it comes to him solving the case. So there is that type of difference that I need because Q is also the main hero. He is the plucky um adolescent protagonist in one moment, whereas when he gets serious and uses logic, he just like completely remains focused. Now, I get it, because there was also the Animax dub of Detective School Q, but it's been lost. So that was basically my experience watching Detective School Q as a tween boy back in 2004. I related to a lot of the characters. I looked up to a good chunk of them when I was growing up because through Q, I learned a great deal about logic and how to have like a sharp mind and people skills. Through Ryu, I learned how to use focus to my advantage and keep a cool and calm head even when situations just go completely awry. Megumi, I've learned to really sharpen my use of photographic memory. Kazuma, the kid genius, I've learned to appreciate him a lot more growing up. And Kintaro, he was admittedly my man crush as an impressionable 12-year-old about to turn 13. So these five characters defined what it was like to be smart and cool growing up. And aside from the main characters, when it comes to this, like the supporting characters or like the recurring characters, the voice actors I would actually pick for Kaoru Ichinose. Um, that's a bit of a toss up. I think Sasha Paisinger would have been perfect for Kaoru Ichinose or Lucy Christian. Yeah, but Sasha Paisinger would actually be nice for Kaoru Ichinose. For Sakurako Yukihira, it's a toss up between Caitlin Glass and Lucy Christian. Now, Kuniko Toya actually would be cool. It would actually be cool if Lucy Christian voiced Kuniko Toya. Either Lucy Christian or Brina Palencia. But I think Lucy Christian would fit Kuniko Toya a lot better. Then comes or even Monica Rial before she went all woke. Yeah, I think Monica Rial would actually be a nice fit for Kaoru Ichinose. Yeah, the pre-woke Monica Rial before she became a scumbag. Oh boy. Oh boy. 2019 was hardly kind to her at all. And then we got Morihiko Dan. I would have liked to have R. Bruce Elliott voice Morihiko Dan. And Cynthia Kranz as Q's mom. That is A plus casting. That would have been A plus casting right there. Um, then Shino Katagiri. Now, I'd say Tiffany Grant. She would have made for a great Shino Katagiri because, well, rarely do you get to hear Tiffany Grant voice a more mature woman because we've all known Tiffany Grant in voicing a lot of these spunky and feisty girl protagonists. So, like, Asuka from Neon Genesis Evangelion, and even a spunky and voluptuous teenage girl in the form of Zatela from Chrono Crusade. But rarely do you get to have someone like Tiffany Grant portray the voice of reason. So that would have been interesting. But how ADV Films would have managed with the script, I'm pretty sure that they would have filled it with a lot more risque language. So I think if ever I have the time to make what if this company dubs this anime series on DeviantArt, I think I might express my thoughts on them. No doubt about that. Now, in terms of the big bad that actually appears in the later series of Detective School Q, Anubis, I would say that Chuck Huber would be an absolutely amazing fit for Anubis. We've known him as Hiei, so it would have been cool to have had him voice the main villain of Pluto. That from Detective School Q. That would have been cool. Now comes Twin Speaker, another great anime which I had no idea why it didn't end up getting dubbed by American companies. I mean, I caught the Animax dub of Twin Speaker. It was actually really good. I mean, of course, Andrea Kwan returned as Asumi Kamogawa. I am not so sure which other voice actors and voice actresses returned for Twin Speaker, but Andrea Kwan as Asumi Kamogawa, she was the real standout in that role. I think Darren Pleven voiced Mr. Lion, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I think if Funimation, before it went all woke and shit, had a hold of Twin Speaker, I'd actually like to have I would actually like to have um Lucy Christian voice Asumi, and let me take a look at the characters from Twin Speaker. I'll be right with you because it's been a while since I last knew the names of all the characters because I mainly knew the girl characters names. So here we go. So Lucy Christian would have made for a really great voice for Asumi Komogawa because she does have that youthfulness in her voice. Either her or Brittany Karbowski or Jeremy Lee, without a doubt. She would have been a nice voice for Asumi Kamogawa. Brittany Karbowski, I'd actually assign her to Kei Omi, whereas with Caitlin Glass, I would have assigned her to Marika Ukita. Marika is basically the lone blonde girl. So that would have been really cool to have had her on there. And then comes the rest of the characters. Vic Mignogna, without a doubt, I would give him the role of Mr. Lion. And then Shinosuke. I wouldn't mind having Justin Cook voice Shinosuke. And Shu Suzuki, I would end up having Greg Ayres, without a doubt. Greg Ayres as Shu Suzuki. I think he'd be a perfect fit. And then for Asumi's father, Tomoro Kamogawa, I might cast him with I might cast him with John Bergmeyer. Yeah, John Bergmeyer without doubt. Yeah, there's there's like a whole lot of anime that not a lot of people know about that aired on Animax that I think needs to be a lot more renowned. I mean, of course, it's understandable why DTA Tron didn't acquire as much international fame, because if you look at the main character of DTA Tron and the main character of Neon Genesis Evangelion, i.e., Shu in DTA Tron's case and Shinji in Evangelion's case, you kind of realize they do feel like the same damn character. It's almost quite scary just thinking about it. So it's almost quite scary just thinking about it when you think that those two are almost the same damn character. So what else could I say about a lot of my experiences on Animax, right? Another anime that I think deserves a lot more love. Well, there are a couple ones that I caught by the time I was in my teens. In 2005, there was Gankutsuo, which I'm glad it ended up getting an American English dub. I forgot who starred at, because I know that I think it was Johnny Young Bosch who starred as the main hero, Albert. Hang on. There we go. Okay, there we go. The Gankutsuo dub we have for the Count of Monte Cristo, Edmond Dantes, voiced by Jameson Price. Albert Morcerf, voiced by Johnny Young Bosch as a teenager. Franz Tepinay, voiced by Ezra Weiss. And then Eugenia Danglars, Michelle Ruff, Valentine de Villefort, Dorothy Elias Fawn. So really top tier. And yeah, Paul St. Peter, he was the voice of, Paul St. Peter was on there. He was the voice of, let me check, because he also had a role in a video game. I think he was the voice of, he was also a renowned video game voice actor. So he wasn't just known for doing a lot of, it is quite surprising to know that he also did a lot of video game anime roles aside from video game roles. So that was one that I caught when I was 13 years old. I remember kind of enjoying it, but it kind of did take time for me to appreciate Gankutsuo. Samurai 7, looking back at Samurai 7, it can be enjoyable from time to time, but there were some characters that became a lot more insufferable. Like Kirara, for example, she became a bit more insufferable. I sometimes wish she had just learned to kick more butt a lot more often. And her whole clinginess to Kanbei was just pretty pathetic on her part. Yeah. Although and then of course, Katsushiro, he had potential, but he was just, The one character, or the characters that I actually enjoyed from Samurai 7 were Kikuchio, Heihachi Hayashida, and Kyuzo. Those were the characters I enjoyed without a doubt. I absolutely loved Heihachi Hayashida and his brand of optimism, and his love for rice. He was just so precious, absolutely precious. And you got Saber Marionette J, another tweenhood to teenhood classic that actually endured like different voice actors or voiceover companies. The first series, for Saber Marionette J was done by Ocean Studios. I should know because the voice for the English voice for Lime was Maggie Blue O'Hara, who I also knew her as Garan from Inuyasha, and the voice of Kitty Pryde from X-Men Evolution. She had that noticeable, youthful, optimistic, spunky voice that she managed to emit as Lime, and that became really noticeable. Then came Saber Marionette J again, but this time with an American company. Mona Marshall was the voice of Otaru this time instead of Brad Swale. Hang on, let me type it down. Yeah, the Saber Marionette franchise definitely went through a whole lot of cast changes. And here's something interesting about the narrator. Ocean Productions first had Richard Newman for episodes 2 to 4, then came Don Brown for episode 5, and then Paul Dobson for episodes 7 to 18. So the first voice for Otaru, Brad Swale. Oh, and Jerry, my goodness. From episodes 3 to 13, she was voiced by Erin Fitzgerald. And from episodes 14 to 25, Nicole Oliver. It's pretty surprising to know that Nicole Oliver actually voiced Cherry, this very diminutive, sweet marionette, because I also know Nicole Oliver in a lot more mature, stately roles. I mean, her performance as Princess Kaguya from Inuyasha Movie 2 Castle Beyond the Looking Glass rocked. She made my bones just stand stiff, and the hair on my skin just stand on end. That was just how amazingly Nicole Oliver did as Princess Kaguya from the second Inuyasha movie. I never thought that she could pull off that type of role as, Cherry from Saber Marionette J, let alone the second voice of Cherry. Then you got Bloodberry, voiced by Saffron Henderson, and Sam Vincent, who you all know as Double D from Ed, Edd n Eddy, voicing Mitsurugi Hanata, or Hanagata. Yeah. Then comes, let me check. Yeah, and then Saber Marionette R, which was actually the sequel to Saber Marionette J, but for some reason ended up being like um the first the first incarnation in OVA form. I didn't catch that until I was 15 years old on Animax in 2007, so I was surprised of its existence. So you got Saber Marionette R. Yeah. Basically, Lime, Cherry, and Lime and Cherry. Well, Maggie Blue O'Hara still voices Lime, and Cherry still voiced by Erin Fitzgerald, i.e., the first voice. Janice Jod, instead of, Saffron Henderson, voiced Bloodberry. So that was actually quite fascinating when I caught this particular incarnation in OVA form. it didn't help that the Sexa dolls also were were a sort of callback to the to the to the rivals of the marionettes or the rival marionettes. You have Brid, Edge, and Canny. Yeah, basically they were kind of rehashes of the following: Tiger and Lux, voiced respectively by Venus Terzo and Aaron Fitzgerald before Colleen Wheeler took over. Okay, so Saber Marionette J again. Yeah. Then it was replaced by American voice actors with Mona Marshall as Otaru, Julie Maddalena as Lime, Bridget Hoffman as Cherry, and Mary Elizabeth McGlynn as Bloodberry. Then a new character comes into the mix in the form of Marine, voiced by Leah Sargent. So then you have American voice actors on there. And the final installation, Saber Marionette J to X. It's gone back to Canada, but this time with Blue Water Studios based in Vancouver instead of, let's see right here. I think Ocean is also, yeah, it's also based in Vancouver. Yeah, both Ocean and Blue Water are based in Vancouver. So look at that. Instead of Brad Swale, or instead of Ocean Studios returning, they ended up having the voice actors from Blue Water Studios: Jonathan Love as Otaru, Mariette Sluiter as Lime, Kendra Masonchuk as Cherry, and Mariana Yaromi as Bloodberry. They also got Dave Petit voicing a new character, Young Min. Well, at least for episode 5. But then he also voiced Dr. Hessa, also from episode, also all the way through. Okay, yeah. Saber Marionette J's English dub history, or the Saber Marionette franchise's English dub history, is quite insane, for lack of a better word. Just jumping from like dubbing studio to dubbing studio. But the Japanese, it's been consistent all the way through. In fact, I would even say that this particular franchise was when I got to be so familiarized with Megumi Hayashibara's gorgeous and amazing singing voice. It's no wonder why this woman is known as a woman of 1,000 voices, at least in the anime world. And I've been respecting the absolute shiz out of her. I mean, from voicing ebullient and feisty characters like Lime to the more taciturn Rei Ayanami from Neon Genesis Evangelion to the more mysterious and voluptuous Faye Valentine from Cowboy Bebop, and even a boy character like Tommy from Dragon Ball Z, and a comedic character like Alfred J. Kwok. My God, this woman was amazing. It's absolutely amazing to listen to her body of work. And it's no wonder why I consider her to be one of my all-time favorite voice actresses, at least in Japan. And also, like, my number one role model when it comes to voice acting, aside from Koichi Yamadera on the men's side, because she is absolutely versatile. Koichi Yamadera and Megumi Hayashibara are absolutely god tier seiyuu, and they just deliver every single time I listen to them, and they just win me over all the freaking time. Their performances on, Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, like having Koichi Yamadera as Meyer Link and Megumi Hashibara as Layla, absolutely god tier. No doubt about that. Okay, so I also caught Alien 9. Rather fun OVA series. Stratosphere, I need to rewatch that because that anime is barely touched upon, let alone reviewed. I remembered enjoying the absolute heck out of it when I was a young boy of 12 years old. And I'm still shocked that that anime series didn't end up acquiring a lot more love than it really did. So I do owe it to myself to rewatch Stratosphere and review it one day because that anime series is barely talked about, as in barely. I remember the English dub being quite solid. Other than that, it was still an enjoyable show. Area 88, well, not the 1970s version, but the 2000s version, I remember being absolutely intrigued with it. Just truly intrigued with a lot of the tension about that particular anime adaptation. Oh, excuse me, not the manga came out in 1979, but the OVA was released between um, February 5, 1985 to August 15, 1986. So the anime TV series remake was released between January 8, 2004 to March 25, 2004. So that's actually the incarnation that I grew up with, as in not the 1980s version, but the 2000s version in which Shu is a blonde instead of the 1980s OVA version where he is, you know, brown haired. Yeah. Speaking of OVA, let's also move on to Captain Harlock. But in this particular anime series, he's known as Captain well, in the anime series that I caught, growing up, yeah, Space Pirate Captain Herlock, The Endless Odyssey. That was the anime series that I remembered catching when I was a 12-year-old. The fact that it had Lex Lang as Captain Herlock and Richard Cancino as Tadashi, absolutely god tier. And this is another anime series that I need to review one day because this was the version of Captain Harlock that I grew up with. I didn't really grow up with the other Captain Harlock anime series. I I really, really do need to catch up with a lot more of Captain Harlock because man, just thinking about catching up with a lot of the Captain Harlock anime series, it's almost like opening a treasure trove. But I will say this: I did catch, um, I did catch Galaxy Express 999 and Adieu Galaxy Express 999 growing up, and I even bought the DVDs when I was in Hong Kong. So definitely a great pair of movies that I remembered enjoying as a youth. And here it is, Galaxy Express 999. Well, the movie. Yeah, Galaxy Express 999, the movie, and Adieu Galaxy Express 999. I didn't catch Galaxy Express 999 Eternal Fantasy. This one, I remembered enjoying so damn much. I remembered enjoying Galaxy Express 999. The dub that I had was the Ocean Studios dub. So, not the New World Pictures. So that was the one that I definitely enjoyed at the time. Then comes Adieu Galaxy Express 999. This was also very enjoyable, and one that I remembered liking so much when I was about to close my adolescent years. Yeah. So a lot of the stuff that I caught on Animax. And aside from the anime that I caught, I also caught a good chunk of Super Sentai shows and Machine Heroes. Among the Super Sentai shows that I caught on Solar TV were Five Man and Jetman. Basically, both of them dubbed in Tagalog. So definitely fun memories I had with those particular shows. Um, I think I might have caught a couple of older pre Zurenja Super Sentai shows, but I forgot which ones. But the ones I vividly remember are Five Man and Jetman, or their complete titles: Q Sentai Five Man and Chojin Sentai Jetman. So those are the ones I remember catching, and they've kind of helped me appreciate the Super Sentai series a lot more as a grown up. And the last time I watched Animax to the full was somewhere in 2012. So by the time I was 20 and about to move to Berlin, I think Dream Satellite TV, I think Dream Satellite took off Animax as far as I'm concerned, or maybe they might have switched around. I don't know. But that was the last time I ever caught Animax. Now we move on to Hero TV. Yeah, aside from Animax, I actually first caught up with Hero TV, which, mind you, the the shows featured on Hero TV were all dubbed in Tagalog, whether they be Power Rangers Power Rangers series like Power Rangers SPD, or manhwa, or even like some of the Western animated shows, or even, but most of it was anime series. So I caught Baram 1 on there. Didn't have much of opinion about it. But I caught Inuyasha, obviously, on Hero One, aside from catching Inuyasha on ABS-CBN when they had their anime afternoon blocks. Um, then came, oh, I'm trying to remember. Chrono Crusade, yes, Chrono Crusade. Yeah, Chrono Crusade, Noir, and Najika Blitz Tactics. I'm surprised that they managed to show Najika Blitz Tactics on Hero TV. And consider this. What these three anime series have in common was that they were also dubbed in America by ADV Films. So another few anime series to review. And I think it'd be quite cool to talk about, because although I did talk about and made a tribute to the Chrono Crusade Christmas episode, which I think is still one of the finest Christmas episodes I caught in anime of all time, and pretty much defended it, I still think that it's still worth a watch. It's still pretty much worth a watch in my opinion. And then comes I think Akazuka Chacha also aired on Hero TV. Most of the anime series that used to air on ABS-CBN, because Hero TV was also an ABS-CBN property. So a good chunk of anime that aired on the Kapamilya channel also aired on Hero TV. So I remember that I also read somewhere that Animax also dubbed Yakitake Japan. Yeah. Another anime series that I have no idea excuse me, why no American or Yakitate Japan. I have absolutely no idea why any American dubbing company didn't end up dubbing Yakitate Japan. The opening's really sweet. The opening song's really sweet, and I'm still kind of gobsmacked that no American anime dubbing studio dubbed Yakitate Japan, because it's really good. It's quite an enjoyable anime series. Um, I think Animax also did an English dub about it on it. So yeah. And then comes the last anime series I caught on Hero TV. Hell Girl. Like the one with Ayaka Kurenai. That was like the last anime series that I caught on Hero TV. And that was when I was 21 years old. Like vacationing in the Philippines at the time. Yeah, a lot of good memories I had with the anime that I caught on various Filipino networks. I definitely miss those times, and those anime series kind of defined my childhood and defined a lot of my tastes. In fact, you guys should also be familiar that on DeviantArt, I've posted like a 7 team um martial arts AU headcanon that I've been enjoying thus far. Like I do intend to um revamp it a bit, because there were times I wasn't particularly satisfied with it. Oh, and speaking of anime series I still enjoy from Animax, I still enjoy Jean Chef. I still think that Mika Seido is an underrated anime heroine, and I think she does deserve a lot more love. She really deserves way more love, because her spunk and her strong attitude definitely sell it for me. I have been appreciating Mika Seido ever since I was a young tween to a young teenager, and I still enjoy her to this day. She is definitely one of the underrated ones. Oh, and another anime series that I caught on Hero TV was Shura no Toki. I do consider that particular anime series, action historical anime series, to be very underrated, which basically deals with various generation of the Mutsu clan and how they use unarmed combat to overpower their enemies. So another underrated gem that does deserve a lot more love and appreciation, and a lot more. I think a lot more praise. Heck, I even caught Baki the Grappler on GMA. It's definitely quite the anime to get your testosterone pumping, as well as Hajime no Ippo. Yeah, the fun thing about the likes of Hajime no Ippo and Slam Dunk, these were, and of course Yu Yu Hakusho and Flame of Recca, these were the anime series that were very well known throughout the Philippines in the 90s and early 2000s. And I also, and of course, aside from that, I even caught Code Geass from on ABC 5. Also quite an enjoyable anime series. I have yet to review that in earnest. I also caught Monster on Hero TV. I seriously owe it to myself to watch and review all 74 episodes of Monster, as in both subbed and dubbed. That sounds like a freaking Herculean task that I might have to do if ever once I'm done with my MA thesis, because that's quite the endeavor. I also intend to like do a tribute or talk about why I enjoy the Taguro Brothers saga, or the Dark Tournament saga. especially where the Taguro brothers are concerned, because they were the highlight, especially the younger Taguro. He was the highlight of what made Yu Yu Hakusho shine for me. Also, there is the chapter Black Saga, in which Sensui steals the show from everybody's feet and wins in my eyes. So definitely we'll consider doing a tribute video on both the Dark Tournament Saga and the Chapter Black Saga. Probably this Halloween. Fingers crossed. So veering away from anime, I would like to turn my attention to the 5 father figures from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, seeing that this is Father's Day. So, and I've been wanting, I'm just so pumped up. I'm so pumped up to really want to do a close reading on each of the father figures because, well, with my experience with growing up with the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I only heard about it. Well, I think I did catch some episodes here and there growing up, but didn't start fully watching it until I was 13 years old and vacationing in Hawaii with my parents. And I caught the show on Nick at Night. Yeah, those good old times of Nick at Night airing classics like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, The Cosby Show, heck, even The Jeffersons, Cheers, just to have millennials just catch the show and thoroughly enjoy it, you know, rather than just having a whole bunch of Friends reruns. I mean, seriously, Friends isn't really that good of a show, but anyway, you know, when it comes to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, what I was trying to argue, or what I am trying to argue, or excuse me, let me reword that. What I am arguing in my MA thesis is that these 5 father figures, like, are the ones that have helped Will find direction in his life growing up in Bel-Air so that he can become a lot more, socially acceptable as, a young black man. You got Uncle Phil, who, although tends to be irritated by Will's shenanigans and stubbornness, he's still that one father figure who helped him up, raised him up, showed him not only how to be socially acceptable as well as strong in principles and take like a lot of matters more seriously, but also was that father figure that Will desperately needed in his life and showed him how to be a socially elevated member of Bel Air while also like acknowledging that this is a youth who does need some good old fashioned rearing and a good like father figure and male role model in his life. And since then, I've seen Will's and Uncle Phil's sort of father son relationship grow as the series progressed. Even when it comes to season 6 being the graveyard episode, because at least there have been some moments where I still appreciate Uncle Phil's and Will's father son, somewhat father son bond. And Will's come a long way, even despite, that whole malarkey that happened at the end of season 5, which, man, I really would have loved to talk about, you know, Will's and Lisa's, relationship on a more deeper on a deeper level, but I think that will have to be saved once I submit my MA thesis. So, and of course, I also had a very frank talk with my first supervisor about kind of decentralizing Uncle Phil because there were also other father figures involved. Like it's not just Uncle Phil being the father figure to Will, his nephew slash surrogate son, and being this upstanding image of social elevation and upward social mobility with a great career as a lawyer and then a judge and having a loving wife and, three and then four, kids that he has protected and raised. But there's also Jeffrey, who was just as active as a family member to the Banks family. I mean, he's had moments where he served as the assistant father figure to Will, like in Kiss My Butler from season 1, and Hillary Gets a Life in season 2. And he was even little Nicky's godfather in Twas, or excuse me, Twas the Christening. Twas the night before christening. Then twas the night before christening. Yeah, twas the night before christening. So he did come a long way, and of course, what more can you expect from Aunt Viv, who saw the best in Jeffrey, and of course Ashley, who arguably was the favorite of Jeffrey's, wards that he's been having a hand at raising. So Jeffrey also has his moments of being a father. And let's also not forget that in season 6, which was another gem despite its dark clouds, was also having Jeffrey be reunited with his biological son, Frederick Vickers. And speaking of biological, and of course, Jeffrey, you know, resorts to ending up going back to England so that he could spend more time with him in the second part of I Done. And then speaking of biological fathers, yeah, you got Lou Smith from Papa's Got a Brand New Excuse. So, what I've managed to gather from Lou Smith is that he's not socially elevated as Uncle Phil is. So, and of course, it's kind of a bit doubtful if he uses his whole tenure as a trucker as a way to cover up his whole um, his whole not so great sides to Uncle Phil, or his less ideal sides to Uncle Phil and Will. So I know that on a pessimistic note, Lou is perceived as a sort of scoundrel and opportunistic coward of a man who just doesn't really seem to want to compensate for all the lost times that he's had with Will. And Papa's Got a Brand New Excuse. I mean, watching it a lot more um, with more sobering eyes and just soaking it in. It did make me feel rather shaken on the inside, and it did make me feel like, yeah, that a lot of emotions just end up being like being chased around me the more I look back at Papa's Got a Brand New Excuse. And let's also not forget about the whole, behind the scenes tale that was occurring that really elevated Will Smith's acting skills, especially when having the approval of James Avery. Yeah, James Avery, God rest his soul, he was really not only that serious actor that made sure that everybody, you know, stayed grounded, let alone focused on their works, but he also um, he was really that father figure that gave everybody direction and made sure that they all were conscientious, let alone cognizant of their Black American heritage. So, um, James Avery really was that man who was the anchor to everybody on board, and he definitely sailed his ship the best way he could. And that's something that I've learned to appreciate a lot more as I've not only appreciative of the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, even with its flaws, especially in like the fifth season and of course the sixth season. It's still a damn great show that I consider to be one of the all-time greats because yes, I know that Robin Means Coleman criticized shows like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air for also returning to like minstrel stereotypes and having characters dance a lot more and then just kind of make Black American upper class or upper middle class living standards a sort of joke. But other than that, I ended up, you know, disagreeing with that by stating that, you know, despite Means Coleman arguing that the 1990s were basically the neo minstrelsy era of characters being more or returning to their more overtly racialized and stereotype portrayals, it was still an era that marked an increased awareness of what was going on in the Black American community, as well as an increased participation of Black American actors, actresses, and filmmakers. So there was a lot more of an increased viewership or an increased participation of Black American performers and artists, even despite what happened during 1991 and 1992 with the whole Rodney King incident that unfortunately saw four white policemen being exonerated or excuse me or receiving a lighter sentence, and then comes the whole riots. Who boy, definitely difficult times. So there was quite the intersection of real life strife and of course what the topics were emphasized in hip hop, rap, and R&B music in the 90s, especially since they've been growing among the youth. And those particular installments also dealt with racial discrimination and all the socioeconomic problems that occurred during that period. So that was basically something that I used as a counter argument. I'm not going to go too much into detail about it, but that's what I I counter argued when it came to Means Coleman stating that the neo minstrelsy era was basically the era where all these Black American characters return to their overly racialized stereotypes, but you know despite all that, they kind of showed a sort of dichotomy. The the urbanized Black characters making fun of a lot of these um, upper middle class standards or even upper class standards kind of also shows the diversity of the Black American experience, because it shows that it's not just one particular side of the Black American experience that gets emphasized or the other that gets degraded, but they're all sides that are considered. So were put into consideration and put into great focus. So of course, that is something to consider and something to also think about when it comes to excuse me, when it comes to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And not to mention Benny Medina, he also based the show on his life growing up in Watts. So he also made the move of having the Banks family not be white, because it's been done before on Different Strokes and Webster, in which a white family adopts socioeconomically disadvantaged black boys. But this time, the Banks family the Banks family is a Black American family, to show that there are also racial and socioeconomic issues also occurring within the Black American community. So there's also the emphasis of Black on Black prejudice occurring in that community, as emphasized on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So that was also something to consider. So aside from Uncle Phil and Jeffrey being the great father figures to Will, and Lou failing to deliver his promise as Will's biological father, especially when he slinks out at the end of Papa's Got a Brand New Excuse, and Will is just left so angry and sad and just, oh man, that final line, "How come he don't want me, man?" That got me every time I watched and rewatched that final scene. It just kind of shows you right there that even with Uncle Phil, you know, being tough on Will, and even even when he kind of gets irritated at Will's shenanigans, he was always that one father figure who gave him the direction he needed, who gave him the tools that he needed to keep on growing, especially to become a lot more socially acceptable as not only a Bel-Air denizen or a surrogate member of the Banks family, but also as a fully realized young adult Black American man. Then you got Robert Watson from Vying for Attention. Yes, he did get introduced in Christmas Show, and like through Vi mentioning his name and just being all over the moon every time she mentions him. And then we get to see him in the flesh and Vying for Attention. So what I've noticed about that episode is that the friction mainly comes from Will feeling like Robert is this unwelcome guest in his biological family's life, given that he's mainly grown up in a single parent household and his mother always being there for him. And then you got this new potential patriarch and his young daughter, Claudia. Already, it seems like Vi's and Robert's very intimate relationship and them getting closer to each other is also made very clear via Claudia, played by the young and inquisitive Raven Simone during her Olivia years from the Cosby Show. So basically, while the Cosby Show was still airing and coming to its final episodes, Fresh Prince was starting to be on the rise. And it's not the only instance. I mean, the parallel between cousin Pam Tucker from The Cosby Show and Will Smith from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air having similar backgrounds of being adopted and raised by affluent Black American families so that they can become socially acceptable people. There's a parallel right there. And it's quite interesting to know that although Pam Tucker was mainly a recurring character from seasons throughout season 7, Will Smith is basically, or William Will Smith is essentially the main character of his show. So that's something to pretty much consider. And what I've also noticed about Robert, well, he tries to get onto Will's good side, but he was having none of it. And it basically took Vi to convince Will to make it better, make the experience better, and even tells him this, that she wanted to introduce Robert to Will, so that he could also feel good. And I could see that there is that potential father figure being on there. So other than that, after Robert's appearance on Vying for Attention, he ended up being gone, and the whole intimacy that Vi and Robert had in season 2 ended up being retconned in season 3 in Mommy Nearest, which was pretty unfair, but I could see why, because, well, with that particular element being retconned, I think it would give viewers a bit of time to also be familiarized with, Will's biological father, Uncle Lou. Yes, I know that, Uncle Lou is the absentee father, was only mentioned a couple of times. The first time that he was mentioned was when Uncle Lester stated that Will can take out his negative feelings about his absentee father onto him. Yeah, I didn't include Uncle Lester in my MA thesis because he wasn't really a direct influence on Will's life in his coming of age story. He wasn't really that much of an influence. It kind of says something. He was pretty much more of a side character, because after Uncle Lester's appearance throughout season 2, he's never seen again in season 3, as according to Aunt Helen, she and Uncle Lester ended up going through a divorce, and he ended up having full custody of Bobby. Oh boy. So he wasn't really mentioned. I didn't really mention him as like a representation of Black American fatherhood, although he himself is also a Black American father, because he didn't really play that much of an influence on Will's life growing into a more socially acceptable, let alone more fully realized Black American man. It kind of says something when, a one time, like when 3 one-time characters, like, Lou, Will's absentee biological father, Robert, Vi's fiance and slash boyfriend, or more appropriately boyfriend, and Marcus Stokes, Will's basketball rival. It says something that these one-time father figures, or one-time father characters, have way more of an impact on Will's life than Uncle Lester ever could. Now, adding an Uncle Lester, to my master's thesis would have been a bit too superfluous. One, because he wasn't that much of an impactful father figure in Will's life. And two, well, he didn't really play that much of a role. There wasn't really that much of a direct, you know, interaction with him other than that one time where he just says that you could take your negative feelings about your absentee father out on me, because that episode, the aunt who came to dinner, mainly talked about or mainly dealt with his whole challenges of his and Aunt Helen's marriage problems. So it's basically him talking to his psychiatrist, and his whole bond with Will was just very, very small. Although Will somehow manages to help them get back together, but it doesn't really last. But in all seriousness, Uncle Lester didn't really leave that much of an impact on Will's life growing up in stark comparison to Lou, um, in stark comparison to Lou, who was that? Robert and Marcus Stokes. And speaking of Marcus Stokes, played by the ever charismatic Alan Payne, who was yet another Cosby Show alumnus that ended up on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Yeah, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air also had its fair share of Cosby Show alumni like Malcolm Jamal Warner, who appeared as himself in in the second part of Someday My Prince Will Come in Effect from season 1, Cased Up in season 2. I think he also directed an episode in season 2. So he really had the lion's share of appearances on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And I also think that he and Will Smith are also good friends in real life. So that also says something about the interpersonal bond that both Will Smith and Malcolm Jamal Warner had as good friends in real life. Um, and it's not just also Raven Simone as little Claudia from Vying for Attention, who was also another Cosby Show alumnus. And then we got Tempest Bledsoe. Yeah, Tempest Bledsoe's cameo stating that, oh, Will's back on the market after that really underwhelming season 5 finale for Whom the Wedding Bells Toll. It was a bit of a consolation prize, but other than that, yeah, I still feel really bad for Tempest Bledsoe's appearance on there. It seems like she was just there to be nothing more than the cameo, and that was just it. Then you got AJ Sanders from A Different World, also having a couple of roles on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And oh yeah, Mashawn Lee from Blood is Thicker Than Mud, also having an appearance as Orlando, Top Dog second in command at the Phi Beta Gamma fraternity. And of course, Alan Payne as Marcus Stokes from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air season 2, episode 15, My Brother's Keeper. So you wouldn't expect that someone as young and dashing as Marcus Stokes would, or someone like him who attends Malibu Prep, would end up being uh, a socioeconomically disadvantaged father figure, right? Well, despite him being a one-time character, the show manages to peel layer after layer about this guy, and then all of a sudden we realize this guy actually has a lot more depth. I mean, he comes from a socioeconomically disadvantaged background. He has younger sisters that he also has to help raise alongside his parents. And surprise, surprise, he also has a young son that he's raising. And wow, just understanding a lot of what Marcus ends up, being defined by, that's really saying something. And it got me thinking a lot more about, the main fathers of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So, and how much the role of being a father is defined by this show, because these father and of course, what Marcus Stokes also exposits after Will ends up making him win the game and the sponsorship is that, well, Marcus also calls out Will on his whole narrowed perception of him, wanting to use basketball and having a prominent basketball career to save his family, as it were. And there's this quote that I actually like from Marcus Stokes that has made me appreciate him a lot more. And I really do wish that he could have appeared in a lot more episodes. He said this, that he's not relying on his basketball skills all the time because there's the chance of him being injured and what's going to happen next. He wants to use his mind so that he can, use it to study in university and use his education to provide for his family, because he knows just how impossible it is to play basketball professionally and make it as a career. So that's something that I've learned to respect a lot about Marcus Stokes, and really wish that he could have been in a lot more episodes. I mean, Alan Payne really sold it as Marcus. He really, really sold it. Both being charismatic and being such a dedicated single father to his young son, or young single father to his young son. That's really, it really does make such an impact. His presence really made such an impact on Will's overall development. And if I had it my way, the characters I would have loved to see a lot more on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air would be Marcus Stokes. He could have been a recurring character. I mean, Dee Dee, I understand why she should have been Will's permanent girlfriend throughout season 2. But the more I look back at Dee Dee, I have to understand this. Both Will and Dee Dee were still teenagers. And we all know how teenage love life is. It's volatile, it's fragile, and it's ephemeral. It's ephemeral. So the likelihood of Will and Dee Dee ending up together throughout season 2 would have been rather slim. I think it's also because of Queen Latifah's ever-growing rap career. Not just rap career, but I think aside from her rap career, it was also her growing acting career. I mean, face it, she was on Living Single. She was also having a growing film career. She was also prominent in the 90s as a rap star, a female rap star, mind you. And by the time the 2000s rolled around, she even had a role on Chicago as matron Mama Morton. despite being roughly the same age as Catherine Zeta-Jones and Renee Zellweger. And the funny thing is, when it comes to um, Queen Latifah as matron Mama Morton, you think that she'd be a bit older than, yeah, she's mainly stated to be older than Roxy Hart and Velma Kelly combined. But it's kind of surprising to know that Queen Latifah is actually a year younger than both Renee Zellweger and Catherine Zeta-Jones combined. That's quite mind-boggling. But I think it's also kind of customary in theater traditions and in some television shows and films that there are tendencies in which the character, although a couple of characters are a bit older than each other, like one character is older than the other in the shows or in the films, in real life, there are actors who are separated from each other in age, and it's completely the reverse in real life. Like, for example, in Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, it is quite mind-boggling to know that, like, Mike Corbett, despite being Leo Corbett's older brother, it's pretty shocking to know that Russell Lawrence, the 21-year-old Russell Lawrence, was obviously younger than the 26-year-old or 25 26-year-old 25 to 26-year-old Danny Slavin. So that one's pretty shocking. And speaking of Power Rangers in space, Christopher Kamen Lee, despite his character Andros being Caron's older brother, he's actually 4 years younger than Melody Perkins. Another instance, although the older brother is not played by someone younger. In Lightspeed Rescue, the siblings, Ryan and Dana, in real life, although Ryan is supposed to be 2 years older than Dana, or basically 1 or 2 years older than 2 years older than Dana, in real life, Rhett Fisher and Allison McInnes are the same age and born on the same year. So that's also quite mind-boggling. You could have actually passed them as twins. And in Power Rangers Samurai, a show that I still have a bit of a grudge against, but it's kind of died down a bit. The interesting thing is that Kimberly Crossman is just a few months younger than Alex Hartman, even though she's supposed to play Lauren, the older sister of Jaden. Yeah. Talk about age reversal or reverse ages. Now, Queen Latifah's first appearance as Marissa Redmond. Yes, I know she's supposed to portray a more mature woman who has an eye for someone younger in will. But at the time, Queen Latifah was roughly 19 or 20 years old. Well, 20, yeah. Queen Latifah was 20 years old when she played Marissa Redmond. And then by the time she played Dee Dee, I think Dee Dee was supposed to be about 17. I think Dee Dee was supposed to be about 17 years old. Yeah, I think she was 17 years old. 17 or 16 years old, as far as I'm concerned. And what I've also noticed about the casting of the Queen of the Night and Pamina. The Queen of the Night is usually cast as someone younger, whereas Pamina would tend to be a bit of an older soprano. Although there are cases in which the Queen of the Night is a bit older than the Pamina, or the singer singing Queen of the Night is a bit older than Pamina. So always depends, always depends. Yeah, Son of Godzilla. Yeah, that would actually be a fun Father's Day movie. Although I would also mainly recommend it for Halloween. So, but still a pretty fun movie. Still, still a pretty fun movie to tune into when it comes to when it comes to monster movies and the like. Yeah, but going to, and of course, I know that I've also repeated this ad nauseum when it comes to the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, but I really think that Will and Lisa should have gotten together. I mean, let's face it, Will Smith and Nia Long had excellent chemistry. But the fact that the writers completely copped out in season 5 and its final episode of season 5, that's just that just hurt. That was just horrible. Now here's how I would have gladly, and I'm probably gonna I really want to make this explicit in the ways that I could improve Will's and Lisa's relationship. It's basically like have Will and Lisa marry at the end of season 6. During this period, you should just actually let Will's and Lisa's relationship develop because season 6, the fact that you still have Will being this Casanova and all these old themes still being brought up in season 6 is already a huge shame. And it's also quite sad, but at least Will Smith and the rest of the gang knew that The Fresh Prince of Bel Air was going to end at season 6. And the two-parter I done perfectly solidified that. Yes, there were a few gems that also made a few licks of sense. I mean, Will and Carlton final like having their influences in each other in music. I mean, the fact that they were shocked to find two copies of like the bands that they listened to, like two What's New Pussycat dolls, with one of them belonging to Will, and then two Biggie Small CDs with one belonging to Carlton. It just kind of shows you right there how much they've influenced each other. And then Will and Carlton doing the Carlton dance for the final time. It's a consolation prize in of itself. And um and then of course Viva Lost Wages. Viva Lost Wages. Um that was a bit of a rehash of um that stripper episode in the season 2 finale, and Carlton's gambling addiction being a lot more pronounced in season 3. So already it was kind of sad that it had to be like that. I mean, you could have actually placed a lot of the season 6 episodes in like random seasons and nothing would have changed. But at least there was the Apache dance from Viva Last Wages. That was still a lot of fun to watch. That was it. And that's like I said, that's a real shame because it was around the time that the actors were starting to move on. I mean, look at Karen Parsons back in 1995. She was on Major Payne alongside Damon Wayans and a very young Orlando Brown. She was no longer doing her Hillary persona in that film. She was embodying a more level headed, down to earth, and very charming guidance counselor, let alone a very motherly one. So, definitely a loving um, surrogate mother figure to Tiger, played by Orlando Brown, and just that type of person that is made of pure win. Absolute win. Okay, and oh yeah, and yeah, it was great to see Hillary just progress as a talk show host and Ashley progress in a lot more mature themes, although Ashley talking wanting to deal with the birds and the bees was what happened to her when she was still a 13-year-old girl in season 2. So, although I'll give this one a little bit of credit, at least Ashley is a little bit more, mature and a little bit more independent. Um, and of course, her new tenure as a model. So that's saying something. That's kind of saying something. At least she didn't end up becoming a one-hit wonder anymore. And that final embrace between Will and Ashley from the final moments of I Done Part 2, when she says, I love you, Will, and Will says, I love you, Ash. It also makes you realize that Will and Ashley were not just a couple of cousins. They were essentially like siblings, with Will being the older sibling or the older brother figure to Ashley, almost in stark comparison to Carlton. Because one thing I've recognized about Ashley's and Carlton's siblinghood is they've gone from being tolerant of each other at best and just being okay at each other's presence and then just being mildly annoyed to just being rather antagonistic at worst in the much later seasons, especially around season 6 when Ashley was starting to find her own way. Oh, and something that I should have been a lot more critical about, I Oh Baby Baby. Yeah, that scene where Hillary was on a date with Dr. Dwayne, that almost reminded me of Hillary's near attempt of wanting to pursue a little bit of a relationship with Dr. Kevorkian, not Kavarkian. Yeah, in terms of the awkward conversations that she initiates. So that itself was a bit of a rehash. It's, to me, still a sad moment. I mean, the way I see Fresh Prince of Bel Air season 6, it's freaking sad. It's sad because for me, The Fresh Prince of Bel Air was a show that could have seen Will grow a lot more and really grow into the man that he really needs to be. I mean, if you've recalled Papa's Got a Brand New Excuse, Will said that he wants to not only finish college, but also get a great job and marry a beautiful woman and have a whole bunch of kids with her and be the much better father than Lou could ever have been to him. And I mean, seriously, you got that with Lisa Wilkes from the entirety of season 5. She was really that one, recurring girlfriend that Will had, who gave him direction, who gave him more of a reason to live, and who really was that one young woman who proved herself to be Will's equal and helped him to come into his own as a mature and sensible man. So that was really Lisa Wilkes. She really was the best out of all of Will's love interests. And it's a shame that the writers didn't really follow through with what they could have done more with Lisa. She really was that girl. She really was that one young woman who gave Will the direction he truly needed to be the man that he needed to be, and also be as faithful to her. So, and you mean to say that Will giving up his Dictionary to Carlton was all for naught? After For Whom the Wedding Bells Toll, are you kidding me? It just seems sad. It's sad, it's a disgrace, and for me, it just makes me think that it was just all for naught. So that's what I've got. That's what I've acquired from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air season, like the end of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air season 5 and the beginning of season 6. So already a tragedy in of itself, if I say so myself too. I guess it just shows you right there that you can't always have a lot of great things, and it turns out one of the great things that the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air had was supposed to be a recurring love interest for Will, and eventually be a permanent one in that very same series. So what was the point? It was like after season 5 and in the beginning of season 6, it was almost like, what was even the point to all this? It was just thrown out the window, which was a big shame, really big shame. And here I am thinking, Will didn't deserve this. He didn't deserve to end the show alone. He deserved to end up with Lisa. And if I had it my way, he really, really should have ended up with her, and the rest would have just gone on. Although I do kind of understand what the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was trying to do, because I've also argued that this show was as much of a predecessor to a successor to the Cosby Show, because both shows or show respectable images of upper class Black American families who have achieved a lot in their lives, and who have a patriarch and a matriarch who have made it strongly in their professional careers, and have well rounded, independent, and strong minded offspring. Some who've endured the gauntlet of college and have ended up pursuing something quote unquote greater themselves, and even endured their adolescence and pre-adolescence and adolescence from, let's say, middle school to high school, and then started out branching out on their own in college. And in Rudy's case, she went from being a kindergartner to a 13-year-old who is 12 12 to 13-year-old middle schooler finding her way. So those are hopeful images that we've seen in the Huxtable family. And not to mention, I get that there are some people who criticize, you know, certain characters being in relationships as, them becoming stupider, as opposed to, like, look what happened to Sandra, right? During her tenure with Elvin, it's like when he's introduced, they were basically having a spat. And after Elvin gets called out for his sexist machismo, there are times that he still ends up being such a dork. Luckily, for Hillary, yes, she had Trevor Collins, who, mind you, really had great chemistry with him. Yeah, Hillary also had her fair share of, jumping from guy to guy. I mean, her first legitimate love was Trey, or Ice Trey, and they ended up having this sort of love at first sight. And then after that, he's never mentioned again, which is a big shame because I get it. Trey, he was sort of like Hillary's first love in her life as a young adult. And, well, that's just her trying to find her way in love. Her whole thing with Jazz, well, it started out as annoyance in the first few episodes, and then she kind of had a little bit of spark with him in at the end of season 1, but it just returns to Jazz annoying the absolute heck out of Hillary. And all that stuff going on between them was just Hillary just being annoyed at Jazz. And it got old in season 6, especially in I.O. Baby Baby. It really got super duper old in season 6. So that was already a tired joke in of itself. Let's see. And then came, Trevor Collins, the recurring lover for Hillary, even to the point where she would have ended up being married to him. But, well, it seems like the writers wanted to maintain the status quo for Hillary. It would have been kind of interesting to see how her life with Trevor would have, like, fared, because Brian Stokes Mitchell and Karen Parsons as Trevor Collins and Hillary Banks, respectively, they really had great chemistry. They really had a lot of wonderful chemistry. I think the reason why Brian Stokes Mitchell didn't continue as Trevor Collins throughout the remainder of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I think it was really because you got to keep in mind that he is a Broadway actor and a Broadway singer with an almost operatic type of voice. He has one of the most beautiful baritone voices I've ever heard, velvety, round, and rich. And my God, does he know how to own it? He owns his baritone voice to the max. That's just how much Bram Stokes Mitchell wins as a singer and wins as a Broadway actor. So I think his commitments to Broadway and all these Broadway shows coming in left and right, I think they were remaining top of mind. So, and of course, let's also not forget his discography, his ever-growing repertoire of song and music. I think that's another reason why the whole Trevor and Hillary ship did not sail as farther as it should have. Another ship that should have sailed. Yeah, Jazz's and Jules' marriage. Oh my God. I feel kind of sad because for Jazz because you'd think that he'd have someone great in Jewel, right? Well, she just ended up being in season 4, and by the time season 5 rolled around, never seen again. I think it might have had something to do with Karen Molino White's other, you know, trajectories. I'm starting to think that, let me see what happened to Karen Molina White around the time, because I think she was quite busy. I think Karen Molina White was also quite busy at the time. So, she, right there, right there. So, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Jewel Robertson for just a couple of episodes, for only 2 episodes. Now I could see why, because she was on Hanging with Mr. Cooper as Florence. She was on Rock. She was on Getting By. She was on Me and the Boys as a recurring character. So it would have been really impossible for her to have continued as Jewel. And yes, she is another Cosby Show alumnus from the 7th season who ended up on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So you have basically Michonne Lee, Alan Payne, and Karen Molina White finding themselves on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So I'm not so sure about Erica Alexander. Let me see if she also appeared on The Fresh Prince, because I don't think she did. I don't think she appeared on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Let me see right here. No, she did not appear on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Although her character's name, the implication of her character's name, or Pam, was basically being referenced on Not With My Pig You Don't. So just sort of a consolation appearance of Pam Tucker, only in reference, and that was just it. And yes, before anybody asks, I didn't catch the football season. I know that there was some talks of Germany winning against Scotland, and that's fantastic. But other than that, yeah. Other than that, I haven't really been into watching the football match or the soccer match that much. So let's just say that a lot of things have been going on, and they've been going a bit haywire, if you catch my drift. So lots of things going on. A lot of academic priorities to fulfill, and just trying to make sure that I attain a grade that is a lot better and way better than the previous ones, because, well, it sort of is what it is. I mean, I did catch up from my bachelor's, and I managed to do way better than what I did in my bachelor's. So that really does say something of how far I've come from in my studies, at least here in Berlin. And I feel grateful. I'm very grateful to have at least done all of my studies here in Berlin throughout my 20s and my 30s, and just found my direction here, even with all the dark clouds that happened. I just cannot begin to tell you how much of a fulfilling experience it is for me to be in Berlin and just thrive like I need to thrive. Okay, so outside anime and Fresh Prince of Bel Air. So there were a lot of other TV sitcom fathers that I continue to admire. I still admire Heathcliff Huxtable or Cliff Huxtable. I still admire him. I really admire his very down to earth and fun loving and just, father knows best nature. And yes, say what you will about Bill Cosby, but I still argue that despite all the crazy shit that happened to him, he really did care about how, you know, kids and even the Black American community were supposed to grow. Yes, I know that a lot of his conservative beliefs are not going to be rubbed well with a lot of people, but I still subscribe to those respectability beliefs because he ended up earning his doctorate in education in the 70s, especially when using Fat Albert in his dissertation to um, integrate television as a helpful resource for learning, especially among young children. So, I mean, whether Fat Albert will receive a nice rerun session on MeTV Tunes is a bit debatable, given that Bill Cosby has become quite the bogeyman in academic circles and even among people who still think that Cosby is this rapist and criminal and should never have been released and all that la di da stuff. But I feel like what people forget to realize is that Cosby has used a good chunk of his experience as an educator and his resources, his academic resources, to empower children, whether they be white children or children of color. He really knew how to not only work with them, but also understand them. I guess you could say that he was a sort of Black American version of Mr. Rogers in his prime, although Mr. Rogers, he really was in a class of his own, without a doubt. Mr. Fred Rogers was in a class of his own. And I did have a chat with Ty, aka Junebug Films, about what was going on behind the scenes of one of the cast members being a gay man. And the cast member said that he wanted to come out on the show, but Mr. Rogers or Fred Rogers was like, no, I wouldn't want that because it's going to alienate the viewers and you might end up losing your job and I'll end up losing my job. So that ended up being scrapped. And it's obvious to see why because um sure, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood does teach young children about the values of tolerance, acceptance, and growing up to be a lot more mature and make more mature decisions. But never will it have an agenda that's going on because it's only gonna alienate certain viewers, and that's something to consider because you know using a platform to come out um, would have been a bit contentious, especially on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, because, well, Mr. Rogers is a show that is mainly targeted towards children. And children are not only impressionable, but they're also quite volatile in their thoughts and in their imaginations and how much they would still want to grow up, but still want to explore the world around them. So they're still very impressionable and they're still trying to find themselves in this journey called life. So having a character come out as a gay man would have been a bit too a bit too alienating for viewers tuning in to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise, a blessing that um, that didn't end up being aired, or let alone ended up being scrapped, because I could see where Fred Rogers is coming from. It's not just the growth of children that is a priority, but also like um, making sure that it's agenda free. So the only time I caught Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, or the only times I caught Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, was through like a lot of the videotapes, recorded videotapes that um, I would play, that my auntie would play, especially when I was spending time with my cousin in her side of the house when she was still in Cebu. Um, I would come over there and watch videotapes. Yeah, she was like a sister to me growing up. Um, she was definitely like a sister to me growing up. Yes, we fought like siblings. I did get physical with her. She got physical. I did get actually a lot more physical than to her, but she was really like a sister. She was really like the twin sister from another mister. Yes, she was like a grade ahead of me. Um, because well, I did get held back. Well, at first I thought it was because of my bad behavior or not so great behavior, but my mom always insisted, no, you were just smart. You were just this intelligent kid, but who needed proper direction. Yes, you passed your subjects, but you were just this smart kid who just needed to be a little bit more stable. I didn't think too much about like why was it that I went from 1A to 1B throughout my grade school years and then just ended up going to grade 2. Why was that? I didn't get it at the time. But, you know, at first I blamed myself because of like how I used to behave, but nowadays as a grown up, I think because you know, when you're still at that impressionable age of 6 and 7 years old, you're not. Excuse me. My throat has been dry. I've been talking way too long. Especially for like nearly 3 hours, and which I thank you all for still keeping up with me on my stream thus far. I know it's not easy listening to me talk and talk and talk, but hey, that's what the stream's for. And speaking of the stream, this will probably be like the last stream I'm doing for this week because StreamYard, well, as you could tell, it's only free programming, lasts until like 20 live hours. So this is technically the last few hours I'm going to record on StreamYard until it ends up being renewed on June 22. So we're looking at 5 days from now, or 6 to 5 days from now. And then I could just resume with longer hours of streaming, or probably 4 hour streams, if not more or less. We'll see. Or even lesser than 4 hours. We'll see. We'll see. But yeah, she was like my sister. She was like a sister to me, and I do kind of miss her. Yes, we did get some into fights. Yes, we tended to disagree on a lot, and yeah, there was a bit of friction in which she is academically better than I. When than I was. But you know what? I don't want to let those issues become too much of a deal because we both had our own strengths and um we both had our own talents in which we can improve on. We just had different things and different interests that moved us, and I'm glad that we were able to find a lot more interpersonal respect now that we're grown ups. And we've found that interpersonal respect from adolescence all the way up to our current years. And that is absolutely precious. Without a doubt, absolutely precious. And that's something I will never, ever in my life take for granted. So even with all the fights I've also had with my siblings, and you know what? That's another thing. Another thing. I know that my siblings are also watching this stream as long as it is, even with my stuttering from time to time. But I think looking back now as an older brother, as the eldest in my family, my younger siblings are also the people I dare not take for granted because, yes, I did have some times where I wasn't really the best older brother or the best example. But now that I think about it a lot more critically, I'm glad that we've managed to learn to respect each other a lot more. I've managed to respect them a lot more, and I will do my part in being as much of a better role model to them, because yeah, we have our we have our own different set of strengths and weaknesses, but at least we still managed to be our own individuals when all is said and done, and it's what I consider very precious. I'd also like to wrap this stream up by also thanking my parents because yes, we did have our we did have our ups and downs, especially growing up in my teenage years and early 20s, but let alone my 20s, but I'm glad they managed to support me through and through with every endeavor that I got myself into. It hasn't been that easy, but well, the best things in life are not always supposed to be easy. They're supposed to challenge you and they're supposed to, you know, let you shine or be at the grist of the mill and you'll end up shining like the brightest of diamonds. That's just what I would consider to be absolutely grand and precious. And I would not have been the man I am today without my family. And much like how Uncle Phil acknowledges his past, especially from his origins in Yamacraw, North Carolina, I would also like to pull an Uncle Phil and say, yes, I may have been born in Buffalo, New York, but I was also raised in Cebu, Philippines. I was really one of the lucky ones. Well, not just me alone, but all of my family. My mom, my dad, my younger sister, and my younger brother. Heck, even my um, adopted sister slash cousin. And yes, even my uncle and auntie and cousin. We were all the lucky ones. I've been growing with morals and with a lot of direction, passion, and they gave me, yes, they might have given me material things. My parents might have given me material things, but they've also given me morals, decorum, understanding, and most importantly, perseverance. And yes, the number one thing, love. And to quote Uncle Phil, I just wish that I could give the next generation what I have and what my parents gave me. And before anybody mentions, oh, I do hope he mentions his pig, and then cue Wade in the water with a sepia image of, well, me and my family in our younger years in the 90s. And I'll leave it at that. And that's just something that I've learned to appreciate a lot more as I grow older. I've become a lot more grateful for my family and my friends and all the people that I consider to be role models. You've definitely helped me to be the man I am today. And I will continue to face a lot of challenges, but I'm still sticking to my guns and still sticking to my passions because they continue to move me through and through. With that said, I thank you so much for engaging with me in this really long stream. I hope that you all had a grand Philippine Independence Day. I also hope that all of you had a wonderful Father's Day. And to all the dads in the world, especially my dad, thank you all so much for inspiring not only all of your children and, of course, me as well, but also everybody in your families. Thank you so much for being the rocks in your families. And I also thank my dad for also being, you know, being a very decent man who's also helped me figure out my passions and what I love to do and how I can just really care for people who need my attendance the most and also care about the people that are most important to me. And I thank him so much for that. I also thank my mom for at least pushing me and really pushing me to be the man I am today and making sure that I do not settle for anything less. I thank them so much for this because I've become the man that I need to be. And without their guidance, I would have been nobody. So until then, I thank you all so much for engaging me. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. So until then, I thank you all so much for engaging with me in this stream. I hope you all had a nice Sunday, a great Father's Day, and for a lot of my Filipino friends, I hope you all had a grand Filipino Independence Day. As we say in Tagalog, maraming salamat sa inyong lahat. And until then, I'll see you all next time in the next stream. Take care, everybody.